Nina Jankowicz, who wrote that piece I referenced, led that study in disinformation against Kamala Harris, is here with me. She was also the founding director of the Biden administration's Disinformation Governance Board, which was attacked so relentlessly by the right wing, it dissolved after just 3 weeks. She joins me here at the table, along with Simone Sanders Townsend, the former senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris and current host of the fabulous show, The Weekend, right here on MSNBC. Thank you both so much for being here. So, Nina, I talked a little bit about your research and what you found, and it's sort of stunning. That percentage, 78%, should stun maybe not stun, but it is an alarming number.
It's huge.
Tell us a little bit more about what you found in that research and what it tells us about what we should expect for the campaign ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, you summed it up, Jen. It was over 336,000 pieces of abuse and disinformation that we looked at across 13 candidates. And again, 78% targeting then candidate Harris. I think what's really important is to note that there were 3 key narratives that we're already seeing recycled again. They were sexualized narratives claiming that the vice president slept her way to the top. There were narratives that were claiming that she is secretly a man because she couldn't have gotten to a position of power without having secretly been a man. And racist.
Obviously.
Yeah, right? That's a normal thing that normal people think about. And racist and racialized narratives, which claimed that she wasn't black enough or Indian enough to claim those heritages, or, again, this DEI hire thing, although at the time we weren't quite calling it that. And I think another really important point is that our adversaries look at this disinformation, this abuse, and they echo it. In my own research, I've seen how Russia has echoed these narratives for years, and it's doing it again as we head just toward 100 days before the election.
Such an interesting part of your piece that you wrote from MSNBC. It's like they take the things that are happening here and they push it into the system, which is something we learned from 2016. So, Simone, you know President Biden well, you know Vice President Harris well, you traveled with her. None of this is new.
No.
None of this is new. I think it's important for people to understand. I want to ask you about how she personally deals with this stuff, because this has been coming at her for years.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, probably not at that volume since 2020, but since before that. I mean, you talked about being the first, Jen. The thing about being the first is because you were the first, and whether you were the first woman, first person of color, right, so on and so forth, folks just sometimes don't know how to deal with you. They don't know how to process it, and so they resort to, unfortunately, sometimes racist and sexist tropes and memes and stereotypes. The vice president, though, because she's been the first in literally almost everything she's done, my experience had been, it was new for me when I worked for her because I had never worked for a high-profile woman before. I had only ever worked for men. And there was one day at work where I was like, ma'am, you might be the last woman I work for, because this is a...
There's a story there.
It's a lot. There's a lot that we got to deal with over in here. But she was always aware of the criticism of her, right? Like we wouldn't hide, when I worked there, we didn't hide it from her. But it did not deter her. It was something, though, that I think any candidate, any person in power needs to be aware of what the criticism is. Because when you're not aware, the last thing you want is your candidate, your principal, or the vice president of the United States of America to be out there and someone says something and they're like, well, what is that about? Well, man, we discussed that this morning at 10 a.m. So,
yeah, I mean, it's important for them to be aware, which is such an interesting thing. It's how they respond to it. Now, obviously it depends on the person. So I want to hear from Simone on that. But is there anything in your research that shows what is effective on pushing back against these attacks or kind of batting them down when adversaries are using it?
Well, I think something that's given me a lot of hope in the past couple of days, and something that kind of manifested as we were watching those crazy clips from right-wing commentators, detracting from the vice president.
The very qualified Sebastian Gorka.
Yes, right? We're laughing about it. We're making light of it and calling it out for how ridiculous it actually is. And that's what I love about kind of Coconut Kamala, the memes that have been coming out, Brat Kamala, right? It's owning it, and it's also pointing to these ridiculous criticisms and saying, you know what? We can reclaim those from you, and that's exactly what's happening.
I think it also goes to show, though, how out of touch, and it's a generational thing, because the folks who are lobbying, the coconut thing, I have seen that in right-wing media for a while.
A long time.
And then when, the TikTokers got a hold of it, it's cool.
Yeah.
But right-wing media made it out to be something that was detrimental, right? Something that seemed like, she is unserious, she is not smart, because that is what they are trying to say. And they're trying to say it in these ways. Again, you just saw Congressman Tim Burchett in the House hallway saying that. But if you tune into conservative media and you watch, it has been a daily onslaught since she was was, in fact, a candidate for president. And the reality is that there are people that might not watch our network, but they watch Fox News all day. They tune into right-wing conservative media, and they believe what they are seeing. And so the best counter to that is for them to see for themselves. They say the same things about the president, right? There's this narrative happening around out there that the president is somehow not well, and he has had a healthcare crisis, and that's why he's off the campaign trail. So that's why he's not the candidate anymore. So he's speaking from the Resolute desk yesterday was important so people could see for themselves that this narrative that has been trying to be painted out there, that what they are telling you is not true. Believe what you see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears.
You know, I think one of the things that I mentioned this in the opening that I am worried about, or I think people should be worried about just because of our democracy and you want people to participate, is people hearing this and thinking, I don't think this will happen in our country. People who might support her. Obviously, people vote for who they want to vote for, but like, people don't support her. What should be done about that?
People, look, you know how, Jen, you talk to voters on the campaign trail, and the worst thing is when voters want to be pundits. Yeah. Okay, when voters want to be analysts. A voter.
She's great, but this won't happen, right?
Exactly. You know who will win? The person who people vote for.
Yeah.
And so that's what I used to always tell people when I work campaigns. They're like, oh, I don't think so-and-so can win. They will win if you vote for them. And so people should vote for who they want to see in the office. And if you vote for that, if enough people vote for the person they want to see in the office, that person will win. It's as simple as that. But the campaign has to go out and make that case, and I think you have started. I mean, the campaign's 4 or 5 days old now? As we count, it's very new.
A week is a year.
Literally, it's been eons. And they are going to have to continue to make that case, because I do not think it is enough and I don't think the Harris campaign believes this at all, but I have heard a lot of people talk about, oh, well, she is a woman, she's a woman of color, she's black, South Asian descent. Obviously, those demographics are now locked down. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to go out and earn people's votes. And my experience with the vice president has been that she has always said, okay, how can we connect what is happening to people? When I go out and talk to people, she used to tell us, I want folks to know that I understand what they're talking about. Give me an example that I can connect to them. Don't just give me the numbers. Give me an example and give me something specific to their community. And that, I hope we see more in the next 100 days from the Harris campaign.
Nina, we only have a few seconds left, but you said something so interesting to me during the break, which is about how the platforms have withheld information, making it harder. So we can't even get this data now, right?
I would not be able to do this same study today because Twitter has shut down access to its platform. CrowdTangle, which was how we listened to Facebook and Instagram, also doesn't exist anymore. And that means that we can't follow the harm that is being done on these platforms and the way that the platforms are absolutely having a dereliction of duty in responding to it because of the political situation and how it's become difficult to do content moderation. It's no longer in favor, and people are worried that if Trump is president, that they're going to find themselves on Capitol Hill or worse, answering for having done the basic, due diligence of democracy.
I mean, where is Amy Klobuchar when you need her?
When you need her. I hope she's listening. Nina Simone, thank you. Maybe you gave people lots of information, maybe made them more worried. People need to be clear about what's coming.